One of the really important ways of being efficient when working on music is to have a template that you can go to that's got some of the material that you are going to consistently use on there, and that as you learn over time that you can start incorporating into your template, so that every time you're starting from scratch, you're not completely starting at a point where you have to do everything, including gain staging, including the way that you're routing everything and all that stuff. And that, for me, has really helped me out. So I'm going to show you some of the things that I have in my template, in my current template, that are very helpful for me, so that every time I tackle a new song, I know that there are certain foundational things that are there for me to rely on. So as you can see here, I start with both having the grid side of Logic open as well as the regular track side of it. And this is because if I'm planning to just loop ideas, I can always go to this side. And if I'm planning to just work the old school way, I can go to the right and do this. And so in doing so here, for me, I always have a machine running. So that's there. This is for my Chapman stick, where I have the melody side and the bass side, both dry and wet, so they have control over it if I'm using an external processor. And then I have the synth leads, synth pads, synth poly, my bass, which includes the bass and sub, and then some vocals with some of the chain effects that I'll show, and then also an empty drum machine designer where I can grab some of the samples that I like that I've got stored elsewhere, and I can use those to put them in here and create a whole new drum set. And then last but not least, having some percussion effects, loops, and other kinds of effects, whether it's sweeps or different things like that. The first thing I always have, so these are at the bus level for my live instruments, and for other stuff, I have it sometimes at the bus level or at the individual level, but I always have a gain knob. This is primarily for gain staging. The idea of gain staging is really so that your overall output is below 0 dB, ideally way below 0 dB, so that when you're reaching the mastering phase, you have plenty of headroom to be able to then use anything from limiters to all that stuff to get it to sound right. And -15 is where I like to start because it gives me plenty of headroom, and as I add more material, the more parts you add to it, the more those things are going to be fighting for a level, and so your overall level is going to go up. And so I have that there for each of those. And then what I have at the bus level of each instrument is also I have a clipper. This is something I turn on at the very end of the composition when I'm done with everything, just to give every bit of component on here a little bit more of a loudness, and just giving it just a little bit more edge to cut through more. And aside from those, I have usually like one lead and then one harmony instrument. What the harmonics does is, if I have a lead here and the harmonics, I have an EQ that's really cutting all the lows and even the highs and leaving this certain area, so that if I have a counter melody or something, it's able to work within the confines of a standard melody. And then I also have a comp here that's actually sidechained to the lead melody so that it's not interfering with each other. Synth pads, I usually like to go, GeForce's OBX is one of the ones I love to start with. That's usually there. And then with synth poly, sometimes I have it, sometimes I don't. That's just like if it's keyboard parts, if it's piano parts, different things like that. With bass, I always separate my standard bass. Here I've got everything below 120 hertz cut for my regular bass. And then in addition to that, I have a sub bass that's doing everything below that area, so that if the sub is there, it's filling out a much lower role than a regular bass part does. Sometimes they're the same part, sometimes they're not, but this way they don't clash with each other. And then I do also have a sidechain. For this one, I just have it set as a kickstart, so that it's ducking. For melodic house, a lot of what I've been writing lately is just standard 4, but sometimes you can use audio signals to duck the to duck the bass according to another part, to a different kind of kick, or another part that you want it to duck to. And then aside from that, I have a vocal part. I don't have a lot of vocals in my stuff, but I do have this set up so that if I want to be able to use something, it's there and ready to go. Once again, with the gain as well. Drum Machine Designer is where I spend a lot of time, and I do really enjoy how Drum Machine Designer is set up in a way where you're able to, whether it's using Logic samples here, whether it's using it within Drum Machine Designer, or whether it's within your own samples that you've collected over time, that you have your favorite kicks that you can bring over, your favorite snares, do things like that, again, for the sake of efficiency and also to have a more consistent sound. With percussion, there's really not much to the initial way I've set it up, other than, again, having a clipper at the bus level. But these do also have, one goes to a reverb. I have a bus set up to a reverb. I have a bus set up to a compressor, and a bus set up to distortion. And for distortion, I've been using, or for saturation, I've been using Logic's internal Chroma Glow lately a lot, and I enjoy it and use it just subtly to make some of the percussion parts and other parts stand out more. That's as far as my channel chain goes. And then on the output chain, on the sub out, what I have is, the first thing I have is an equalizer, but this is not serving the standard purpose of EQ. So this is set up as a mid-side, and it's really meant so that it's making my mono signal, my bass signal below a certain frequency at mono. This is not a necessity, and this is probably more specific to electronic music, but I'm able to turn this on sometimes just in case the low end is getting muddy. And so what this does is, below a certain frequency, it'll make everything into mono, and therefore it gives everything else more breathing room and makes the kick and bass tighter. And then after that, on my chain, I always have a gain function here. This is because sometimes the gain staging starts so low that the volume is too low. Then I'm just compensating for this just for the sake of being able to hear it. The second thing I use in this is the mono switch. Oftentimes when I'm mixing, I'll click on mono to make sure that everything is where it should be. Doing that is a pretty good way of being able to tell if something is off. If it sounds weird in mono, then there is an issue with it. So it's another good way to test it. After that, I have Ozone 11. I'll run this once I'm into the mix to be able to kind of get an idea of what a mastering would be like. Most of the time, I don't master it myself. Once in a while, I will. But this is, for me, it's always been a great plugin to use just to get a general idea for mastering. And for somebody like me who doesn't know a whole ton about mastering, this has always worked out pretty well. And then after that, I'm able to use the adapter, AB adapter. This is more used for being able to compare your song to something similar. So it's really meant to be able to put another song in that genre, or something that you want the same type of sound, to make sure that your frequencies and everything are in the same. I don't really use it to compare it to other songs, but I do like the spectrum that it has here. The imaging is another thing where it lets me know whether the low end is tighter and that it's in the way that I want. Dynamics is really good because you can really tell where it lies in comparison to other music, and then it also has a loud list for different platforms. And then last but not least, I have Sound ID reference. I do pretty much all my mixing in headphones. I will test it in PA system and cars and different things, but because I do most of it in here, this basically what it does is it has your headphones, not all headphones, but most headphones. For me, I'm using the Sennheiser HD490. It has a profile for that, and it tries to give you the most flat sound, basically neutralizing whatever is accentuated on headphones. These headphones already are pretty flat and pretty good for mixing. This just gets it a little bit further and gets a little bit more flattened out. And then after that, that's pretty much it. I do actually have a second computer where I will run some of the other components, like let's see, a VUMT. I use this pretty frequently, again, on my output chain, because oftentimes, even if the music is loud, this is a good way of being able to see via meters whether you have some dynamics, and whether, if you're wanting to have something where it's really pumping, whether it's actually moving, or if it's just flatlining, sitting somewhere specifically where it means that really your music doesn't have enough dynamic range to be able to cut through. Again, this is more specific to electronic, but I think it applies to any kind of music. That's really it. But the main thing is having a template that you can start with, and as you learn new things over time, or things that become your favorite, to put them inside here is a really good starting point to get you going and to be more efficient and to be able to more consistently output music. Hope this helps. Thanks for watching.